I ended up going back to UCLA to get a certificate of sustainability. And basically, ever since, I've been focused on three questions: what is my impact? What can I do about it? And how can I help scale positive outcomes and solutions?
Welcome, neighbors, to Hometown Earth, the podcast that brings a down to earth approach to all of your sustainability questions. I'm your host, Lena Sanford, here on the Believe Podcast Network, the #1 podcast network for professionals. Here, we believe that everyone can change the world. Do you believe? I'm a Midwest gal with big dreams to discover what it takes to reduce my impact on this beautiful place we call Hometown Earth. Join me every Tuesday as we navigate what actions we can take, big or small, to make a positive impact in your life and the lives of your neighbors on Hometown Earth. Hello, neighbors. Today's episode got me thinking a lot about professional athletes and how so often we look to them for inspiration, guidance, and heck, even style advice. Today's guest is not only a professional athlete, he's an impact athlete. Someone who is using their voice in the world of professional athletics for good. Jeremy Casebeer is a professional beach volleyball player and host of Our Impact podcast, working to accelerate climate solutions and protect our oceans. While he's not dominating in the sand as a champion and 3-time best server of the Association of Volleyball Professionals, or the AVP, he's working as an ambassador for Parlay for the Oceans and Forest Stewardship Council, as well as using his platform to scale his impact and partnering with responsible brands that he loves. Jeremy spends his off season living and competing in Rio de Janeiro. He is a self proclaimed avid amateur photographer, surfer, and nature lover. In this episode, we chat about Jeremy's journey to becoming an impact athlete, how others can use their platforms for good, and his podcast, Our Impact. If you want to hear more about the work that Jeremy is doing over at Our Impact, I'll link it in the show notes, and new episodes drop every Thursday. This one is sure to be a hit, so let's get going with Jeremy Casebeer. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us here on Hometown Earth today. Let's just dive right on in. You started out in environmental studies and poli-sci in college. Can you tell us just a little bit more about maybe even what started your journey and what cultivated your love for the environment and nature, starting maybe even as a kid?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. Really excited for our conversation. I guess it started kind of growing up in Santa Barbara. I was fortunate to basically live in the foothills, have hikes right out my back door, and get to go surfing and camping a lot growing up. And then I had a teacher in high school, AP Environmental Science, and he basically painted what the situation is and how dire things are, but also kind of highlighted the optimistic possibilities, the solutions. And we got to go on a field trip out to Santa Cruz Island off the coast of Santa Barbara. And it was amazing. Really
Yeah.
cool group of kids that went, got to plant endemic species, build greenhouses, and basically explore all over the island and got a view of what California looked like hundreds of years ago before all the industrialization and building. So that kind of pure view of what California could be just kind of opened my eyes, and went on to study at UCLA.
Wow. So I gotta ask, and you probably get this all the time. When did you get the nickname the Lorax?
Yeah. So that was given to me. Um, yeah. So we're doing video. So I have a pretty surprisingly symmetrical two-tone mustache. I got that in high school snowboarding at Mammoth. Got a really bad sunburn over a long weekend. Didn't put on any sunscreen. It literally burned the pigment out. It just happened
Oh
to be
my
perfectly
god.
symmetrical. In my first year playing beach volleyball professionally, the announcer for the AVP, one of the funniest guys ever, Chris McGee or Geeter, had just seen the Lorax with his kids, and that was the first time meeting me. He's just like, "Lorax, what's up, man?"
Oh my gosh.
And then after that tournament, like going down the Strand or the bike path in Hermosa Beach in Manhattan, people just a few days later like, "Hey, Lorax!" Is like,
Oh
what?
my
And then
god.
another person did. I'm like, oh, I guess that's my nickname now. So obviously
Yeah.
it fits well with the with what I'm trying to do with sustainability and the environment.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. You're a really good example for following your passions in volleyball and still being able to live a sustainable life. So I think that's a barrier for a lot of people. And, we kind of try to break that down here on this show is that you can still do what you love while still caring for the environment. So, can you tell us a little bit more about when you realized that? Kind of the life that you were living was a bit unsustainable and how you transitioned into the space that you're in now?
Yeah, so basically, when I was graduating from UCLA, I studied environmental studies and was considering something with sustainable development or maybe working with nonprofits, but decided to take a hard left turn. I had played indoor volleyball at UCLA and always preferred beach and figured I could give it a try. I'd never go back to playing beach volleyball if I, jumped into a traditional career right away. So in those first 6 months, I got to play in on the Australian, New Zealand tour, and then also traveled to Bali, Thailand, Turkey, and Israel. And I was pretty hooked after that.
Yeah.
But I've always been looking for a way to gain experience and relevant skill sets while I'm playing because the transition from professional athlete to traditional career can be pretty rough at times. And there's no 401ks, and
Right.
jump serving does not really translate to a resume very well.
Yeah.
So it's been a long kind of meandering path to try and figure out how I can connect the dots. But one turning point was when I went to a Jack Johnson concert in Santa Barbara and saw that he had aluminum cups, no single use plastic. The food was delicious. It was locally sourced. They were using biodiesel generators instead of traditional electricity. I was like, this is amazing. We should do
Yeah.
this in beach volleyball because we basically, it's a similar setup. We're traveling 8, 10 places throughout the summer and basically building a mini city. And the AVP loved the idea, but they're like, how much is this going to cost and who's going to run it? I'm like, I'm not sure yet. So I ended up going back to UCLA to get a certificate of sustainability.
Nice.
And basically, ever since, I've been focused on three questions: what is my impact? What can I do about it? And how can I help scale positive outcomes and solutions?
Yeah.
And I think it's a really, as I'm sure you're aware, like it's a very daunting task to what is my impact? What can I do? Where do I
Right.
begin? What is the most relevant impacts? Like what really matters? Um, so I basically decided to get my own house in order first. I measured my carbon footprint for one of my classes, and that was mind blowing because
Yep.
I spent half the year in Rio de Janeiro where I have family and half the year traveling throughout the US to compete. So obviously
Yeah.
that's a massive impact. So I started offsetting my personal carbon footprint, started offsetting my plastic footprint, and then changing my diet. And but even if I had this feeling that even if I lived air quotes a perfectly sustainable life, which doesn't really
It
exist,
doesn't. Yeah.
it's I'm still just one person, but I'm connected to a ton of athletes and through the sport of volleyball and have an opportunity to talk with brands and nonprofits. So I started looking outside. What
Yeah.
else can I do? So that's where I started to look to nonprofits who are doing the good work
Yeah.
on the front lines, but may not have the budget to work with athletes or, produce content or have that wider distribution because there's so many solutions that exist, but they're not talked about and they're not as well
Right.
known.
Yeah.
So I became an ambassador for Parlay for the Oceans, who works with Ocean Plastic, and also Forest Stewardship Council that works with sustainable forestry. And then I also had a shift where obviously being a professional athlete, you have to work with brands,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be as you don't have to sell out basically. You can
Yeah.
work with brands that are aligned with your values, that take transparent action, that have third-party certifications like B Corp, 1% for the planet, climate neutral, and work with them in a meaningful way. Tell cool stories, find brands and products that you actually like, that you would actually spend your own money on, that you would promote to your friends and family, not just sling a discount code on social media.
Yeah.
So I've been very fortunate to work with a number of brands that are exactly that. They have third party certifications. They're constantly improving, constantly trying to understand what their impact is and what they can do about it.
Right.
Yeah, that's a rambling answer, but
No, you're fine. You kinda touched on so many different things that I'm gonna try to piece together in my mind. So, let's just talk a little bit, more about these brands that you're working with because I think, a lot of people see professional athletes as their role models. That's you see kids, wearing the same things that professional athletes wear and following them on social media. And, even for adults, not even just kids, like adults
Yeah,
are paying
exactly.
attention to what y'all are doing. So, what essentially are some ways that you can scale your impact to brands and even beyond? So, dive a little bit more into the work that you're doing with these brands.
Last year, I started working with John Balcom at Third Wing Group, and he's kind of my manager and agent. And we've really
Mhm.
just been in it together, trying to figure out exactly that question: how do you work with brands in a meaningful way and
Right.
have an impact greater than the traditional sports sponsorship model?
Right.
So, looking for brands that have B Corp, 1% climate neutral, organic, all these third party certifications, because basically you can't bullshit with those. That's to the point.
Right.
All these nonprofits, it's all above board.
Yeah.
Um, and then also thinking about how can I move beyond, throwing their logo on my board shorts when I compete or doing social media posts.
Right.
I got into photography a few years ago, and we were talking a little bit about
Yeah.
videography and photography before we started recording. And I've never been artistic. I've always been an athlete, love sports, love being active, and can't draw for shit. But I started carrying a camera, and like I took thousands and thousands and thousands of terrible pictures, and then I
Yeah.
get a couple good ones, and
You're like,
it
"These are
just
awesome."
yeah, exactly. It's like trial and error, and I
Yeah.
just loved it. So, and I realized I had this really cool network of friends in LA and Rio that were amazing videographers and photographers. I'm like,
Right.
well, how can I work with them? Let's create some content for these brands. So, I started working with Fair Harbor this year and did a video in Rio de Janeiro at Ipanema Beach in the mountains in the
Wow.
rainforest, and it was amazing. It was so much fun,
Yeah.
and the video came out really cool. It was a product launch for their new board shorts, the Ozones, and it was just so much fun. I'm like, all right, let's do more of this. So I did another one for them for their fall collection, and then I just did a video announcing Garden of Life, a B Corp supplement company. They actually have like 13 certifications, but they just became carbon neutral. So I shot a video for them up in Santa Barbara, announcing that they're carbon neutral. So I think just trying to think outside the box. How do you go beyond traditional sports sponsorship? How do you work with brands that have a clear impact, have these third party certifications, and how do you help them achieve their business goals? Because obviously they have to see a return on
Right.
investment, but how can you help them tell their story in a meaningful way that aligns with both your values and is engaging?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of even in that realm then, do you how has support been? You said that the AVP was really supportive of your ideas. Have your fellow like teammates been on board? Have you been able to kind of share the good word with them and your social media platforms? How's that gone?
Yeah. So basically, this last year, Waste Management, the large, what everyone kind of thinks of trash or
Yep.
recycling company, they do a lot
They're
more than that.
everywhere.
Yeah, but they also work a ton in sports. So they work with NASCAR. They work with the Phoenix Open for PGA Golf, which is like the highest standards in sporting and sustainable events. It's zero waste. They
Yeah.
offset their carbon footprint, plastic footprint. It's amazing. So this last year with AVP, they came on as a kind of a strategic advisor to help understand the basic footprint of the tour, the operations, what are the impacts. And then this next year, moving into 2022, we're going to be implementing different strategies and looking at suppliers, looking at the athletes, looking at the other
Yeah.
sponsors involved and making changes. So that's coming down the pipe in 2022. And like you said, the fun part is I get to work with my friends on tour and
Yeah.
try and educate them a little bit because not there's not many other players that are really in this space and
Right.
have really studied it in school or anything, but everyone wants to get involved. I did the first beach cleanup with Surfrider and the AVP a couple years ago, and it was amazing. The response was incredible. Fans, I could only do I think two or three that year, and all the other tour stops fans were coming up like, "Oh, when's the next one? How do we get involved?" Like ocean plastic and obviously living and training at the beach, like it's all right in our face,
Yeah.
and it's very clear and tangible what the problem is and that we need to do something about it. So I think providing athletes, fans, sponsors, leagues, teams, and just the broader sports community in general an opportunity to get involved and like an on ramp to take action is huge. That's what people want. People want that sense of community, and people want to feel like they're really having a tangible difference.
Right. I kind of like that you're working, with the organization because I think that's something that, we try to get across is that it has to come at every level. So, like, you're working with the organization and in these broader groups, but also you kind of talk about being an impact athlete, and that's for not only just professional athletes, but like you're saying, like fans or even like high school athletes that want to get involved. So, can you tell us a little bit more about maybe what an impact athlete is to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's constantly evolving, but basically, I think it comes down to those three questions. What is your impact? What
Yep.
can you do about it? And how can you help scale positive outcomes and
Mhm.
solutions? So everyone has different interests. And I think it's really important just to see what you're most passionate about. Is it
Right.
ocean plastic and ocean health? Is it forests? Is it the mountains? Is it, equal opportunity? Is it access to clean and healthy food? There's so
Right.
many issues, but the interesting thing is it all really ties back to climate in one way or another. So go deep in what you're most interested in and then see who you can support. You don't have to reinvent the wheel from scratch. There's so many good nonprofits. And now there's so many different businesses that are also giving back. One of
Yeah.
my other sponsors, Mir, is a water bottle company.
I have some of those. They're awesome.
Yeah. And on the bottom of every single product, they have literally a giving code that shows the nonprofit and projects that they support. I'm like,
Amazing.
that's the kind of brand I want to work with. Like, you
Right.
don't have to start from scratch. Learn what you can, get started, take a few steps, and then see who else you can work with and support. Because the other thing I've realized too is a lot of these brands and nonprofits, they all work together. A lot of them already know each other. So
Right.
it's just kind of like a virtuous cycle.
Not everybody is gonna get brand sponsorships or anything if they're just like a regular athlete that loves what they do, but they can still support these brands, and you're kind of bringing it to light, like, here are the ones that I love, and that might be down your same road of interest. What would you say are you on the beach side of things of cleanup? What's your passion?
Yeah. I mean, I've literally lived at the beach for the last 15 years. In the
Yeah,
last 5
yeah,
or 6 years, I've been going from Hermosa Beach, California to Rio de Janeiro, so literally year round.
right,
And obviously, I love beach volleyball. I love both cities, but I also love being in the mountains. So
yeah.
I think, yeah, I can't really. I
Can't
guess I'm
pick
a little
one.
bit all over the place.
Yeah,
Like,
I'd say I am too, yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Do you see, like, while you're on the road traveling for any of these, like, do you see the impacts of climate change, or do you just really get to, appreciate all that is wonderful in nature and kinda wanna protect it? Where are you coming from there?
yeah. So I've definitely experienced it myself. Obviously, beach volleyball is you're at the beach.
Yep.
It's very warm, especially in Brazil.
Mm,
You can be playing in 90 or 100-degree weather, full humidity, 100%
yeah,
humidity. And a lot of the tournaments, they have to change the structure of the tournament to allow longer breaks in between side changes, timeouts, in between sets, so that you're not pushing the athletes too far because heat
right.
exhaustion is a real thing or heat stroke. And then one of the tournaments in Chicago, like the last 2, 3 years, has the beach has been eroded away because there's so much more
Mhm.
water and the sand is disappearing. And they had to completely change the format of the tournament. Normally, we have it in one location, a center court, and then two or three other main courts. And they had to shift all those courts and just have one court there and then the rest at another location nearby because the beach is literally eroding and there's
It's
so much
insane.
more water and storms. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was wild. I remember warming up for my match and I see waves lapping underneath the structure of the grandstands. They had to like bring in tractors and like build up
Wow.
berms of sand to protect it. I'm like, that doesn't seem right.
Yeah, that's that's intense. I can't even imagine seeing that and being able to continue to play, like, with a
Yeah.
clear head, that's
Yeah.
tough. Well, so what advice, I guess, would you say that you have for, athletes that are trying to get involved or even fans that are trying to get involved with the climate work that you're doing specifically?
Yeah, I think just get started. A few resources that I found super useful just in my own learning. I mean, there's a ton of podcasts out there, just like
Yeah,
yours. How to Save a Planet. My podcast I started 6 months ago or so is called Our Impact, which
yeah,
is answering those same questions and
yeah,
having people from business, nonprofits, sports that are doing good work and kind of sharing these solutions and their experiences. Um, and then Project Drawdown is a great reference. I learned a lot from them. And that was kind of a turning point in my own kind of understanding of where things are at
Yeah.
is only 3% of climate discussion is about solutions. The other 97% is about gloom and doom, basically the causes and effects, how screwed we are and why we're screwed, which is obviously important to understand.
Yeah.
But people don't respond to fear and anxiety and chaos unless there's a clear roadmap.
Right.
And that's what Project Drawdown and the work of Paul Hawken and many others are starting to do is here's the problem, here's what we're working towards, and then here's how we're going to get there. So I definitely recommend Project Drawdown if you're interested in kind of learning. They just came out with a YouTube series that gives a great overview. And then Paul Hawken's latest book, Regeneration, is also fantastic. So yeah, I guess I'd recommend get started, take that first step, see what you can do yourself, individual actions at home, see what you can do in your community, what nonprofits or organizations you can support. And just talking about it is massively powerful. Katharine Hayhoe, who's a leading climate scientist, I believe she's a Christian in Texas, and she's a leading climate scientist and like master communicator on all things climate change. She says the most impactful thing you can do is just speak about it, because not that many people speak about it. And if you don't speak about it, why would you care about it? And if you don't care about it, why would you change? So that's the first step, is speaking about it, even though it doesn't feel like as, I don't
Yes.
know, meteor impactful, but just simply showing people that you care about it is a massive first step you can take.
So yeah, let's talk about your podcast, Our Impact, a little bit more.
I mean, like I said, I'm starting to connect the dots, but I'm still learning more every day. So getting to talk to all these amazing business leaders, nonprofit leaders, athletes, researchers, it's just, I feel a little selfish because I'm kind of scratching my own itch and curiosity, but
No.
from so many people I've talked to, these are the conversations that we need to start having more of and highlight what people are already doing and how, if you want to, and if you have the inclination, you can help support.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we're doing here. Is I
Yeah.
started with, like you said, tickling my own itch and
Yeah.
just tried to, branch out from there. So that's what I think is so great about our podcasts are similar, but they can provide so much more to the listener it reinforces the same thoughts in different ways, I guess you could say.
Exactly. And you have a different experience than I do, and
Yeah,
people will resonate with your experience just like some athletes or volleyball players or whatever may resonate with mine. And that's why it's
absolutely.
so important for everyone to kind of dive in and tell their own stories and
Yes.
explore similar connected ideas from different perspectives.
Yeah, and building that community. And, one of the things I had Dave Johnson on, he's a professor and lawyer at Stanford. And he, one of the things that he talked about that I thought was really interesting was, we just need to be like people like me and you. We need to be talking to each other and figuring out, how we can build on each other's knowledge. So part of what you're doing with Our Impact is sharing that knowledge. I think you also like write blog posts and do other stuff. So what other do you have supplemental stuff to your podcast that you're hoping to draw people to other than the brand partnerships?
I am writing for blogs for some of my brand partners. But yeah, there's so much you can do with podcasting. Like once you have an interesting conversation, you can create little clips for social, you can create blogs, you can create series around it. So that's one thing I'd love to do is create an Impact Athlete series on the podcast, create a B Corp series on the podcast.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of aspirations and ideas, but right now it's just kind of get these next 10 episodes for season 1 out and as high quality as possible, because it's a lot of, as you know, it's a lot of effort to research, record, schedule, produce, and all the rest. But it's a fun process and learning a lot every day.
I have to ask this question. Who is your dream if you could have a professional athlete on your podcast? Who is your dream guest?
That is a fantastic question. I've never been asked that. Right now, I would say, Lewis Hamilton. I think he's amazing.
Yeah.
What he's achieved in his sport is just outrageous. It's like hard to fathom.
Yeah.
I got hooked on F1 through Drive to Survive, and he's got such a compelling story, and he's just super smart, well-spoken, and he's got one of the most massive platforms in the world, and he's going about leveraging it to, have a positive social and environmental impact in such a authentic way. So I think, that's kind of like the gold standard. He's doing it so well himself. So I would love to have a conversation with him.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think that you keep touching on the right word, like using your platform. So, as long as we are like, we pretty much everyone has a platform. It might not be as big as yours because you do have, you're a professional athlete with tons of fans, but like, each person, even one person putting something out or resharing your content to give more information is so valuable. And so that's why I love that you're doing that. I think everything that you're doing is amazing, and I really appreciate it. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you kind of want to share with the audience a little bit more?
No, I would just like to say thank you. You're very good at what you do and ask really thoughtful questions, and it's been super fun to come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess check out our Impact
Yep.
podcast, and then if you want to connect, I'm active on Instagram and LinkedIn, so
Awesome.
please reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Hometown Earth as much as I did. Let us know by rating and subscribing so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week on Tuesday. Head to the show notes, linked in the episode description for more details, and let us know in the comments what you want to hear next. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Believe.com and @Believe Podcasts. And you can find more about the podcast on Instagram @Hometown Earth or connect with me personally @Lena Saintford. We all know change needs to happen, so let's get started right here at Hometown Earth.